The earth splits open, bleeding rivers of fire into the sky. How did ancient civilizations, with no knowledge of plate tectonics, possibly explain such terrifying power? We are embarking on a global journey to uncover 35 different ancient myths that made sense of volcanoes. You will hear stories of fiery goddesses, imprisoned giants, and celestial blacksmiths from every corner of the world. We will explore why a Hawaiian goddess's rage still shapes the islands, and what monstrous struggle was thought to rumble beneath a Sicilian mountain. These tales reveal a time when the planet felt alive, its moods as volatile as our own. What ancient story of fire and earth do you think might hold a hidden truth? The raw, untamed power of a volcano finds its perfect embodiment in the fiery heart of Pele. In Hawaiian tradition, she is far more than a simple goddess of fire. Pele is the passionate, volatile spirit of the volcano itself, a being of immense creative and destructive power who commands lightning, wind, and the very lava that builds the land. Her story is one of epic family conflict, a celestial drama that quite literally shaped the world. Driven from her ancestral home, Pele fled across the Pacific, pursued by her elder sister Namaka, the formidable goddess of the sea. Every time Pele would thrust her digging stick into the earth to create a new fire pit, Namaka's great waves would surge forth to extinguish it. This was not merely a quarrel. It was a fundamental battle between elemental forces, fire against water. Their struggle carved a chain of islands across the ocean, with each new volcanic peak marking a temporary foothold for Pele, until she finally found a permanent refuge in the massive shield of Mauna Loa on the big island of Hawaii. There, she established her eternal home within the fiery crater of Kilauea. To this day, the beliefs surrounding Pele are deeply woven into modern life. When Kilauea erupts, it is not just a geological event. It is seen as Pele moving, traveling, or expressing her emotions. Her presence is felt in the very landscape. The smooth, glassy strands of volcanic rock known as Pele's hair and the delicate, tear-like drops of lava called Pele's tears are considered her physical manifestations. Many residents speak of seeing an old woman, sometimes accompanied by a little white dog, appearing on the roads near the volcano before an eruption, a spiritual warning to respect the land and its powerful creator. This myth gives profound meaning to the island's continual rebirth, framing the terrifying flow of lava not as mere destruction, but as the passionate work of a divine artist. While Pele's story is one of raw nature and elemental fury, another culture saw the volcano not as a divine being, but as a celestial workshop. For the Romans, the rumble beneath the earth was the sound of a hammer on an anvil. They gave us the very word we use today, volcano, drawn from the name of their god of fire and metalworking, Vulcan. This was not a goddess of unpredictable passion, but a divine craftsman, a master blacksmith whose forge was believed to lie deep beneath the restless Mount Etna in Sicily. The plumes of smoke rising from the summit were the exhaust from his immense furnace, and the occasional fiery explosions were sparks flying from his mighty hammer as he shaped the most powerful artifacts in the cosmos. Can you picture it, the entire mountain as the roof of a subterranean factory, its tremors the rhythmic work of a god? Vulcan was tasked with a monumental duty, crafting weapons and armor for the entire pantheon. Jupiter's legendary thunderbolts forged in that very fire were the ultimate symbols of divine authority. So when Etna grumbled and glowed, it was not necessarily a sign of malice. Often, it simply meant the divine smith was hard at work, meeting a deadline for a new weapon or a piece of magnificent jewelry for the gods. But the Romans also understood that even a craftsman has his limits. When the mountain roared with particular violence, spewing rivers of fire down its slopes, it was interpreted as Vulcan's own rage. Perhaps he was angry at the constant infidelity of his beautiful wife, Venus, or maybe he was frustrated with the endless demands of the other gods. This explanation gave a logical, almost relatable, reason for the terrifying displays of power. It transformed a random, destructive force into a consequence of divine emotion and celestial industry, a place where the very tools of the gods were born from the mountain's fiery heart. But the forge of a god pales before the primal trauma of a fire born from death itself. In the sacred stories of Japan, the very origin of fire is a tragedy. The creator deities Izanagi and Izanami had shaped the islands of Japan and given birth to the many gods of the natural world. Their final child was Kagutsuchi, the fire god, but his arrival was a catastrophe. The act of giving birth to this fiery being was so intense, so burning, that it mortally wounded the mother, Izanami. She descended into the land of the dead, leaving her husband consumed by a grief so profound it curdled into a terrible rage. Izanagi drew his great sword, the Totsuka no Tsurugi, and in his anguish he struck down his own son, killing the fire god Kagutsuchi. Yet from this violent act, new life erupted. The blood that dripped from Kagutsuchi's wounds and the pieces of his slain body did not simply vanish. They transformed. Each drop, each fragment became a new deity. From his blood sprang the gods of rocks and valleys, and from his body parts came the gods of mountains and iron. But the most powerful remnants of his fiery spirit are said to have become the volcanoes themselves, the great simmering mountains that dot the Japanese archipelago. This myth offers no simple craftsman. It presents fire and volcanoes as the direct result of a family's deepest sorrow and a father's unforgiving wrath. The earth's fire here is not a tool or a temperamental goddess, but a literal piece of a murdered god, a permanent scar on the landscape born from the first and most painful of human emotions, loss. That same volcanic fire that forged weapons for the gods was also the ultimate gift to humanity. In Greek mythology, the titan Prometheus performed an act of cosmic rebellion that would forever change the human world. He dared to steal fire from the hearth of the gods on Mount Olympus and delivered it to the mortals below. With this single, defiant act, he gave humanity the power to cook food, forge metal, and ultimately build civilization. But this theft came at a terrible personal cost. The king of the gods, Zeus, was enraged by this transgression. His punishment was as creative as it was cruel. Prometheus was bound to a remote mountain cliff with unbreakable chains. Each day, a giant eagle, the emblem of Zeus, would descend upon him, tearing open his body to devour his immortal liver. Each night, the liver would regrow, only for the agonizing cycle to begin again at dawn. Now, consider the geography of this myth. Many ancient sources place the site of this eternal torment deep within the Caucasus Mountains, but a powerful and enduring tradition links the suffering of Prometheus to the volcanic fires of Mount Etna. The logic is compelling. How else could you explain the unquenchable fires that burn deep within the earth? Fires that water could not douse and time could not diminish. The Greeks saw in Etna's eternal glow a remnant of that primordial stolen flame. The mountain's occasional, violent eruptions could be interpreted as the struggles of the chained titan, his writhing causing the very earth to shake. The plumes of smoke and ash were the breath of his agony. This myth transforms the volcano into a powerful symbol, a monument to both divine punishment and human progress. It is a constant, smoldering reminder of the price paid for knowledge and the defiant spark of ingenuity that separates humanity from the beasts. The fire that warms our homes and powers our forges is the same fire that eternally tortures its giver, a paradox forever burning at the heart of a mountain. Even the stolen fire of Prometheus could not compare to the absolute, world-shaking authority of a god who held a smoking mirror. For the Aztecs, the deity Tezcatlipoca was an omnipotent and fearsome force, his very name meaning smoking mirror, a title that evokes the dark, reflective surface of an obsidian glass used for divination, wreathed in the smoke of prophecy and destruction. This was not a god of a single element, but a master of the night sky, sorcery, and fate itself, a being whose power was both creative and terrifyingly destructive. In this worldview, the sudden, violent eruption of a volcano was not the work of a separate fire spirit. It was the fiery breath of Tezcatlipoca himself, a raw manifestation of his unpredictable and dangerous will. The plumes of dark ash rising into the sky mirrored the smoke of his namesake, while the rivers of lava were his scorching exhalation, cleansing the land in a terrifying display of his authority. He was the embodiment of conflict and change, forces that are never gentle or predictable. Just as he could grant a king his throne through cunning and sorcery, he could just as easily shatter a dynasty with a single, fiery act. This belief wove volcanoes directly into the fabric of cosmic balance. An eruption was not a random disaster. It was a deliberate, if incomprehensible, act from a deity who represented the harsh and unforgiving aspects of reality. It was a reminder that the world was governed by powers that could not always be appeased, only acknowledged and feared. The smoking mountain was his mirror, reflecting back a truth of chaos and power that the Aztecs understood all too well. Far to the north, in a land forged of ice and fire, the end of the world has a name and a face made of living flame. The Norse envisioned Ragnarok, the final, great battle where the gods themselves would fall, and at its heart stands the fire giant Surtur. Hailing from the primordial realm of Muspelheim, a world of endless, scorching fire, Surtur is a being of pure, apocalyptic energy waiting for his moment to march. For the people of Iceland, a land constantly trembling with geothermal fury, every volcanic eruption was not just a natural event, it was a dire omen. The plumes of ash darkening the sun, the rivers of lava consuming the valleys, these were signs that Surtur was stirring in his fiery home. They believed the intense glow from an erupting volcano was the light of his monstrous, flaming sword being sharpened and polished for the final conflict. Each tremor was a footstep, each explosion a battle cry echoing from the future. This myth gave a terrifying yet purposeful meaning to the constant geological unrest. The earth was not merely unstable, it was a countdown clock. The fire and brimstone were previews of a destined cosmic war, where Surtur would lead his legions of fire giants against the gods in a confrontation that would ultimately consume the entire world in flame. The very ground they lived on was the front line of a prophecy, making every shiver of the earth a reminder of an inevitable and spectacular end. Even an unborn god can shape the world with his frustration. In the rich traditions of the Maori people of New Zealand, the rumble of an earthquake and the fury of a volcano are the actions of Uamoko, a deity who never saw the light of day. He is the youngest son of the Sky Father, Rangi, and the Earth Mother, Papa. When his older brothers decided their parents' eternal embrace was stifling the world, they forced them apart, pushing the sky high above and laying the earth flat below. But this great separation happened while Uamoko was still nestled within his mother's womb. Trapped there for all time, he became the god of earthquakes and volcanic activity. His story is one of profound, primal discontent. The tremors that shake the land are his restless movements, his stirrings and turnings as he seeks comfort in the perpetual darkness. The geothermal vents that steam, and the volcanoes that erupt are his fiery breath, his desperate attempts to find warmth in a world that was denied to him. This myth gives a deeply human, almost tragic dimension to the land's instability. The ground does not shake out of malice, but from the constant, grieving struggle of a child who was left behind. Every eruption is not just a release of pressure, it is a sigh of sorrow from the earth itself, a mother forever holding the son she cannot set free. In the high Andes, the very ground could tremble from the displeasure of a single, unseen creator. For the Inca, the world was shaped and sustained by Pachacamac, whose name translates directly to Earth Maker. He was not a distant, benign architect, but a deeply volatile and demanding deity, the source of all life who could just as easily take it away. A slight against him, a forgotten ritual, or a societal imbalance could provoke his terrible wrath, which manifested as the earth splitting open in violent quakes. And where the earth fractured most profoundly, the fire of the underworld could burst forth. Volcanic eruptions were understood as an extension of this divine fury, the ultimate expression of Pachacamac's power to remake the world he had created. This belief was not mere superstition. It was the foundation of a societal contract with the divine. To prevent such catastrophes, the Inca developed an intricate system of rituals and offerings. Priests performed meticulous ceremonies, and communities offered precious goods, from perfectly woven textiles to valuable coca leaves, and in extreme cases, human sacrifices. These were not bribes, but essential acts of reciprocity. They were meant to maintain the delicate balance between humanity and the powerful, temperamental force that held the mountains aloft. A quiet valley was a sign of a pleased god. A rumbling volcano was a stark reminder that the Earthmaker required constant appeasement, his power as present and unpredictable as the land itself. The celestial hammer of a Slavic god did more than shape metal. It forged the very sun itself. In the vast pantheon of Slavic mythology, the supreme god Svarog was the divine blacksmith, a figure of immense creative power who hammered the sun into existence and set it upon its celestial path. His name is deeply rooted in the word for light, and his domain was the cosmic forge, a place of unimaginable heat and brilliance where the fundamental elements of the world were crafted. The rumble of thunder was often interpreted as the sound of his mighty hammer striking the anvil high in the heavens. But what happened to the sparks that flew from his divine work? The people believed that those brilliant, fiery fragments did not simply vanish. They fell to the earth, and where they landed, they burrowed deep into the ground, nursing a hidden fire that would sometimes burst forth as a volcano. This was a profound and beautiful explanation. It connected the terrifying eruption of a mountain directly to the creative act that gave the world light and warmth. A volcano was not a punishment or a monster's breath. It was a remnant of the sun's own birth, a piece of celestial fire returning to the surface. This myth framed Svarog not as a god of destruction, but as a master artisan whose work was so powerful its echoes were felt for ages. The Earth's fire was a direct inheritance from the heavens, a creative force that could, at times, overflow its bounds. How does this compare to the solitary forge of Vulcan beneath Mount Etna? While both are master smiths, Svarog's role is far grander in scale. Vulcan crafted weapons for the gods, but Svarog crafted the very gods themselves and the central star of the cosmos. His volcanic sparks were not the byproduct of a bad mood, but the glorious, overflowing evidence of a universe still being perfected. A story of stone and sorrow stands eternal in the Blue Mountains of Australia. Here, in the ancient narratives of the Gundungurra people, the dramatic landscape tells a tale from the Dreamtime, a foundational era when the world was shaped. The story centers on three beautiful sisters, Mini, Wimla, and Gunadu, who lived in the Jameson Valley. Their lives were peaceful until a great and powerful warrior from a neighboring tribe saw them and desired to marry the eldest. Tribal law, however, forbade such a union, creating a dangerous conflict. To protect the sisters from the ensuing battle, a wise elder, a medicine man, used his magic. He turned the three young women into stone, intending the transformation to be temporary, a safe haven until the danger passed. But tragedy struck. The medicine man himself was killed in the fighting, and with him, the secret of how to return the sisters to their human form was lost forever. There they remain, the three sisters, three towering rock formations that rise majestically from the valley, forever frozen in time. The geological history of this region, marked by volcanic activity millions of years ago that sculpted the sandstone pillars, is woven seamlessly into this narrative of family, protection, and the unbreakable authority of ancestral law. The mountains are not just a backdrop for the story, They are the story itself, a permanent reminder of a moment when magic intervened to uphold the rules of the community, even at a heartbreaking cost. In the dusty plains of Mesopotamia, the wind was rarely a gentle breeze. It was a force that carried sand, sickness, and sometimes a malevolent presence. The people of this ancient land feared Pazuzu, the king of the wind demons, a terrifying creature depicted with a grotesque canine face, scaly body, and wings of a bird. He was the bringer of storms, drought, and pestilence, his breath a foul wind that could wither crops and choke the life from a village. Now imagine that wind turning thick and black, blotting out the sun for days on end, filling the air with a gritty, suffocating ash that made every breath a struggle. For a civilization with no concept of a tectonic plate or a magma chamber hundreds of miles away, this sudden, inexplicable darkness had only one conceivable source. A volcanic eruption, even a distant one, would have cast a pall over the entire region. Its effects felt long before the cause was ever known. The ash cloud was not a natural phenomenon. It was the physical manifestation of Pazuzu himself, his vast wings spreading a canopy of disease and famine. The demon's primary role was to command the southwest wind, the wind of desolation, and what was a volcanic winter if not the ultimate desolation? Crops would fail under the dim, poisoned sky. Livestock would sicken, people would cough and gasp, their lungs filled with the very substance of the demon's passage. This interpretation wove a terrifying but logical narrative. The world was not acting randomly, it was under assault from a specific, knowable evil. The solution was not to understand geology, but to appease the demon or call upon other gods for protection. Amulets bearing Pazuzu's own likeness were even worn to turn his power against him, a desperate attempt to fight fire with fire, or rather, demon with demon. In this worldview, a volcano's most far-reaching weapon was not its lava, but its shadow, a darkness that could only be the work of a winged king breathing ruin upon the world. A perfect cone rises from the plains of the Philippines, its symmetry so breathtaking it seems sculpted by divine hands. This is Mount Mayon, and its flawless form holds a story of love and loss as fiery as the lava that sometimes flows from its peak. The legend begins with the beautiful Princess Magayan, whose name means beautiful, and a young warrior named Panganoron from a rival tribe. Their love was forbidden, a classic tale of romance blossoming in the shadow of conflict. They arranged a secret meeting to elope, but a jealous suitor, the chieftain Pagtuga, learned of their plan. In a desperate attempt to force Magayan to marry him, Pagtuga kidnapped her father. The stage was set for a great battle. Panganoron and his warriors rushed to rescue the king and save his beloved. The fight was fierce, and just as victory seemed within reach, tragedy struck. An arrow meant for another found its mark in Princess Magayan. As Panganoron rushed to her side, he too was struck down, and the two lovers died in each other's arms. From that very spot, the earth began to swell and rise, forming the majestic mountain we see today. The people believed it was a grand tomb created by the gods to honor their eternal bond. To this day, the mountain's occasional unrest is interpreted through this emotional lens. When Mayon rumbles and spews ash, it is not merely a geological event. It is said to be Princess Magayan, restless in her grave, or the enduring passion of the two lovers that still burns fiercely within the earth. Their story transforms the mountain from a natural wonder into a permanent monument, a testament to a love so powerful it literally shaped the landscape. Even the chains of a god can make the whole world tremble. In the cold, harsh world of Norse mythology, the trickster Loki, architect of so much chaos, finally faced a punishment that echoed through the cosmos. His crime was the most grievous of all, orchestrating the death of the beloved god Balder. For this, the other gods seized him and bound him deep inside a cavern, using the entrails of his own son as his fetters. But the torment did not end there. Above Loki's head they placed a great serpent, a creature whose venom dripped relentlessly toward his face. His loyal wife, Sigyn, stayed by his side, holding a bowl to catch the burning poison. Hers was a terrible vigil, a cycle of endless duty and impending doom. She could not leave her post, for the moment the bowl filled and she had to turn away to empty it, the venom would strike Loki's skin. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The searing pain would cause the bound god to convulse in unimaginable agony. His violent writhing was so powerful it did not just shake the walls of his cave, it shook the very foundations of the world. The ground itself would split and heave, and from the fractures the hidden fires of the earth would roar to the surface. Every earthquake and volcanic eruption was, in this belief, a direct result of Loki's momentary torment. The mountain's fury was not its own, but the physical echo of a god's scream. This myth personifies the planet's volatility in the most intimate way, tying the random violence of nature to a specific, ongoing story of crime, punishment, and heartbreaking loyalty. The earth does not shake because of anonymous forces, but because a wife's bowl has overflowed once more. Two kings once stood where only mountains remain. In the heart of Java, the legend of Mount Summing and Mount Sundoro tells of a bitter rivalry between two powerful monarchs, each ruling his own prosperous kingdom. Their conflict was not over land or treasure, but over an unyielding pride that neither was willing to surrender. This was no ordinary war. Their armies clashed, but the kings themselves possessed such immense supernatural power that they chose the landscape itself as their weapons. They began to tear the very earth apart, uprooting entire peaks and hurling them at one another with godlike strength. The world shook under the bombardment, the sky darkened with debris, and the valleys filled with the thunder of colliding mountains. It was a battle that threatened to shatter the island. The gods, watching from above, could no longer tolerate such chaos. To end the destruction and force a permanent peace, they delivered a divine judgment. In a single, transformative moment, the two warring kings were frozen in place, their human forms transmuted into stone and earth. They became the twin volcanoes, Summing and Sundoro, forever locked in their confrontational stance, facing each other across the Javanese landscape. Their ancient fury was not extinguished, only contained. To this day, the occasional rumble from one of the peaks, or the plume of smoke that rises from a crater, is seen as a sign. The people understand it as the simmering anger of those ancient kings, their eternal rivalry still playing out in the language of geothermal fire and trembling ground. The mountains are not just natural features, they are a permanent monument to a conflict that reshaped the world, a warning etched in rock and fire about the dangers of pride that refuses to yield. The purifying blaze of a Celtic bonfire connects to a deeper, more ancient fire. For the Celts, the sun god Belenus was a source of healing, light, and vital warmth. His influence celebrated each spring during the festival of Beltane. On that day, great bonfires were lit across the hillsides, their flames representing the sun's returning power, a ritual meant to cleanse the land and protect the community. Now consider witnessing a force that made those sacred fires seem like a mere spark. A volcano, with its river of earth-born fire and a plume that touched the heavens, was an event beyond ordinary comprehension. While the Celts did not have a specific volcano deity, they would have interpreted such an awesome display through the lens of their existing beliefs. The immense, concentrated energy tearing open the ground could only be understood as a direct and overwhelming manifestation of Belenus himself. This was not his gentle, life-giving warmth, but his raw, untamed power made visible. The lava flow was not a destructive force to be feared in isolation, but a divine and purifying fire on a colossal scale, burning away the old to make way for the new, just as the Beltane fires cleansed the fields for planting. In this worldview, the volcano was Belenus working at his most fundamental level, a terrifying yet sacred reminder that the god who nurtured the crops also held the power to remake the very earth beneath them. Eternal youth became a curse for a woman of quiet virtue. In the traditions of the Klickitat people, the mountain known today as Mount St. Helens was once a wise and kindly old woman named Luwit. She was renowned for her unwavering goodness and the selfless care she showed to all living things. Her virtue was so great that it reached the chief of the gods, who decided to reward her. He offered Luwit the one thing any mortal might desire, the gift of eternal youth and breathtaking beauty. She accepted, and her transformation was immediate. The wrinkled elder vanished, replaced by a woman of such radiant perfection that she could stop the heart of a god. And that is precisely what happened. Two powerful warrior brothers, the gods Wyeast, now Mount Hood, and Poto, now Mount Adams, saw her and were instantly consumed by a rivalrous passion. Both demanded her hand, and Luwit, caught in an impossible situation, could not choose between them. The brothers' jealousy erupted into a cataclysmic battle. They were not mere men, they were forces of nature, and their conflict laid waste to the entire landscape. They tore forests from the ground and hurled boulders the size of hills, their fury shaking the very foundations of the world. The chief of the gods watched as the land was destroyed, and his grief turned to a terrible resolve. He could not take back his gift, but he could end the destruction. He punished all three. The two brothers were frozen where they stood, transformed into the great, snow-capped mountains that bear their names, forever facing each other in a silent, simmering standoff. And Luwit, the beautiful woman whose only crime was her virtue, was also turned to stone. She became the graceful, symmetrical peak of the volcano that still carries her spirit. This myth explains not only the origin of three prominent peaks, but also the volatile nature of Luwit herself. Her occasional, violent eruptions are not random. They are the fiery echoes of that ancient, tragic love, the enduring sorrow of a woman who was given everything, only to lose it all. That celestial battle between fire and water echoes across the world, but in China, a single act of demonic fury was said to have broken the world's very frame. The myth of Gong Gong presents a villain whose defeat led to global catastrophe. He was a malevolent water demon, a minister of fire who aspired to the throne of heaven itself. He challenged the virtuous Emperor Xuanzhu for cosmic supremacy, leading to a war that shook the foundations of creation. When Gong Gong was finally defeated, his rage knew no bounds. In a colossal tantrum of pure spite, he hurled himself headfirst into Mount Baju, one of the 8 great pillars that held the sky aloft from the earth. The impact was unimaginable. The pillar shattered. This was not just a mountain breaking, it was a fundamental support of the cosmos giving way. The immediate consequence was a cosmic imbalance. The sky itself tore open in the northwest, and the earth sank in the southeast. The heavens were now tilted, explaining why the sun, moon, and stars all moved toward the west. The earth was fractured, causing the great rivers of China to flow relentlessly eastward into the sea. But the damage went far deeper than floods. The rupture of the earth's crust unleashed the elemental forces trapped within. From the great fissures, wildfires erupted across the land, and from beneath, the very fires of the earth, what we would call magma, burst forth. This myth provides a sweeping, unified theory for ancient China's most terrifying natural phenomena. The floods that plagued river valleys, the earthquakes that leveled cities, and the volcanic fires that scorched the earth were not separate events. They were all direct results of that one world-breaking impact. The ground did not simply shake, it was a planet groaning under a broken sky. The volcanoes did not merely erupt, they were the inner fires of the earth escaping through a wound inflicted by a demon's pride. Gong Gong's story connects celestial disorder directly to terrestrial chaos, framing our volatile planet as a casualty in a divine war that never truly ended. Even a defeated monster can shake the world from his prison. After Zeus and the Olympian gods had overthrown the Titans, a new and far more terrifying threat emerged from the deepest pits of the earth. His name was Typhon, a being so monstrous he was called the father of all monsters. He was a colossus of coiled muscle and raw fury, so immense his head often scraped the stars. Where his legs should have been, 100 venomous serpents writhed and hissed, and his very breath was a storm of scorching wind and fire. This was not a creature to be reasoned with, but a force of primal chaos that sought to tear down the ordered cosmos itself. The ensuing battle between Zeus and Typhon was the most cataclysmic the world had ever seen. The king of the gods hurled his signature thunderbolts, while Typhon answered with blasts of molten rock and hurricanes of flame. For a time, the monster even gained the upper hand, tearing out the sinews from Zeus's limbs and imprisoning the crippled god in a cave. It was only through the cunning of Hermes and Pan that Zeus was restored, allowing him to rally for a final, earth-shattering assault. With a thunderbolt of unimaginable power, Zeus finally struck Typhon down, but he could not destroy the monster's immortal form. Instead, he chose a prison that would serve as both a cage and a perpetual punishment. He hurled Typhon beneath the great mountain of Etna in Sicily, burying him alive under its immense rocky weight, and there the myth tells us Typhon remains. His eternal struggle to break free is the source of the mountain's famous fury. Every time Mount Etna rumbles, it is the sound of the monster heaving against his stone bonds. The plumes of ash and smoke are his scorching, ragged breath, and the rivers of lava that pour down the slopes are the pure, liquid fire of his rage, vomited up from the depths of his being. When the ground shakes violently during an eruption, it is not a separate geological event. It is Typhon thrashing in his chains, his serpentine legs lashing out in the darkness, trying to tear the very mountain apart from the inside. This explanation ties the volcano's two most terrifying aspects, the fire and the quakes, into a single, epic story of imprisonment and defiance, a constant reminder that the greatest threats were not vanquished, only buried. Deep within the Mayan underworld, a trial of fire awaited two destined heroes. The Popol Vuh, the sacred book of creation, tells of the hero twins, Hunahpu and Xbalanque, and their harrowing descent into the realm of Xibalba. This was not a simple quest, but a cosmic confrontation with the lords of death themselves. The twins were forced to spend a night in the House of Gloom, and then another in the House of Knives, but their most telling ordeal was in the House of Fire. The lords of the underworld commanded them to remain inside a scorching, blazing inferno, a chamber of pure, concentrated heat. For any mortal, this would have been an instant death sentence. Yet the twins did not burn. They endured the flames and emerged unscathed, outwitting the very lords of death. Their eventual triumph culminated in their glorious ascent back to the surface world, where they rose into the sky to become the sun and the moon. Now consider the landscape these ancient Maya inhabited, a land punctuated by volcanic peaks. How could they not see the journey of the twins reflected in the earth itself? A volcanic eruption is a descent of fire into the underworld, a violent engagement with the powers below. The river of lava is a trial of pure heat flowing directly from the domain of Xibalba. And when the eruption subsides and the lava cools, it creates new, fertile land from the ashes of destruction. This is the symbolic ascent of the hero twins, the creative rebirth that follows the trial by fire. The volcano becomes a physical manifestation of the epic cycle, where destruction is merely a prelude to creation, and where the fires of the underworld are ultimately conquered to give life to the world above. The frozen tundra of Siberia conceals a fire that defies the very ice around it. For the Chukchi people, the Earth's heat was not a monster or a god, but a presence. Volcanoes were the dwellings of powerful, sentient spirits, beings as complex and unpredictable as the people who revered them. These entities were never simply good or evil, but forces of nature with their own will and moods, demanding a cautious and respectful relationship. An eruption was never a random outburst, it was a clear message. If the spirit was angered by some community transgression, a broken taboo or a sign of disrespect, it might express its fury through a plume of ash or a river of fire. Yet, a volcanic event could also signal something far less punitive. It might mean the spirit itself was on the move, packing its fiery essence to relocate to a new mountain home. This interpretation wove the volcano directly into the fabric of daily survival. The spirit's mood was thought to govern the weather patterns and the migratory paths of the caribou, the lifeblood of the Chukchi. A displeased spirit could bring unseasonable blizzards or drive the herds away, threatening the entire community with starvation. Therefore, maintaining harmony was a practical necessity. Shamans would lead ceremonies, offering precious bits of food, finely crafted tools, or even prized reindeer to the mountain, not as a bribe but as a gesture of respect and reciprocity. They were acknowledging a shared existence with a powerful neighbor, one whose fiery home was a constant reminder that the line between a sustainable world and a catastrophic one was maintained through reverence. The serene slopes of Mount Halasan hold a secret of divine creation. In the heart of Jeju Island, this great shield volcano was not merely a geological formation, but the sacred home of demigods, powerful beings born from the union of the heavens and the earth. The legend tells us that these divine figures, the very ancestors of the Jeju people, descended to the island and chose Halasan as their dwelling place. From this central peak, they set about their work of creation, shaping the entire island with their immense power. The mountain itself was their first and greatest masterpiece, a gentle giant rising from the sea. The vast volcanic plains, the dramatic cliffs, and the intricate, winding lava tubes that snake beneath the surface were all seen as their deliberate handiwork, the physical evidence of their presence and their artistry. These were not random features, but the corridors and chambers of a divine workshop, a testament to a time when gods walked the land and molded it with purpose. This belief made Halasan far more than a mountain. It was a spiritual axis, the point where the earthly realm and the divine world touched. Pilgrims would journey to its slopes, not to conquer the summit, but to seek wisdom and connect with the sacred energies that flowed there. The very air was considered different, charged with the presence of its creators. A walk through one of the massive lava tubes, like the magnificent Manjangul, was not a simple cave exploration. It was a descent into the womb of the island, a journey through the foundational work of the demigods themselves. The silence within those dark, echoing spaces was a form of communication, and the unique formations were read as messages from a time when the world was still soft and being shaped by divine hands. This myth gave every rock, every valley, and every spring on Jeju a profound, living significance, framing the entire volcanic landscape as a permanent, open-air temple to its creators. A king's shoulders once sprouted serpents that fed on the brains of his subjects. This is the terrifying legacy of Zohak, a figure of Persian mythology whose eternal imprisonment lies within the heart of Mount Damavand. This majestic, snow-capped peak, the highest volcano in Asia, is far more than a mountain. It is a cosmic prison designed to hold a monstrous tyrant for all time. The story begins with a noble king corrupted by a demonic force. The evil spirit Ahriman, in the guise of a cook, tricked Zohak into allowing him to kiss the king's shoulders. From those very spots, 2 black serpents grew, and they could only be appeased by a daily feast of human brains. For 1,000 years, Zohak ruled as a brutal despot, his reign a long shadow of terror. His tyranny was finally challenged by the blacksmith Keve, who led a great rebellion. The righteous hero Feridun ultimately defeated the serpent-shouldered king but could not kill him. Instead, Feridun bound Zohak in unbreakable chains and cast him into a deep, dark cave deep inside Mount Damavand. There he remains, suspended from the cavern's roof, trapped for eternity. The mountain itself became his jailer. The occasional, low rumbles that emanate from the earth around Damavand are not mere tectonic shifts. They are the sounds of Zohak stirring in his chains, testing his bonds with all his demonic strength. The volcanic heat that warms the mountain's hot springs and vents is the seething, fiery rage of the imprisoned king himself, a constant, smoldering reminder of his evil nature. His desperate struggles to break free are what the people believed caused the ground to shudder and the mountain to occasionally exhale plumes of steam and gas. This myth transforms a natural landmark into a powerful symbol of good's ultimate triumph over evil. Damavand is not just a volcano, it is a monument to liberation, a permanent seal on a tomb of tyranny, ensuring that a monster who once devoured the minds of the innocent can never again walk the earth. The Earth's inner fire is not always a chained monster or a temperamental god. On the islands of Vanuatu, the volcano is a living, breathing relative. Mount Yasur, one of the world's most active volcanoes, is not seen as an inanimate force of nature, but as a great being with a heart that beats deep within its fiery chest. The constant, rhythmic booming from its crater is the sound of its powerful pulse, a drumbeat that resonates across the entire island of Tanna. This is not a metaphor, but a core spiritual truth. The volcano possesses a spirit, a conscious presence that is aware of the people living on its slopes. It has moods that can shift like the weather, from a contented, gentle rumbling to a furious, earth-shaking roar. The relationship between the people and the mountain is one of mutual respect, a delicate pact maintained through generations. The community understands that their survival depends on the volcano's continued favor, and so they have developed intricate rituals to soothe its temper. Village elders and chiefs perform special ceremonies, offering precious gifts of kava, the sacred root, and perfectly woven mats to the edge of the crater. These are not empty gestures, they are acts of communication, a way of speaking to the mountain spirit and reaffirming their reverence. Stories passed down through time tell of ancient chiefs who possessed a unique and profound connection to the fiery mountain. These wise leaders could interpret the subtle changes in the volcano's rumble, understanding its language of smoke and tremor. They would stand before the glowing abyss, not in fear but in conversation, their chants and prayers serving as a bridge between the human world and the spirit of the mountain. Through this sacred dialogue, they could calm its anger, persuading it to hold back its destructive potential and ensure the safety of their villages. In this worldview, an eruption is not a random disaster. It is a direct response, a message that the proper respect has not been shown, that the community has fallen out of balance. The living heart of the mountain beats on, a constant reminder that the most powerful forces on Earth demand not domination but dialogue. Even the most wonderful magic can shatter, and its breaking might shake the world. Deep within the Finnish epic, the Kalevala, lies the story of the Sampo, a magical artifact of unimaginable power. Forged by the great smith Ilmarinen, it was not a weapon but a source of endless abundance. Its lid would grind out salt, a precious commodity for preserving life. It produced grain to banish hunger, and it created gold, the very measure of wealth. The Sampo was a divine engine of prosperity, a single object that could sustain an entire people. Its creation was a feat of cosmic craftsmanship, an act of ordering chaos into tangible, life-giving resources. But such power is never secure. A great conflict erupted over its possession, leading to a catastrophic sea voyage where the Sampo was shattered and lost to the depths. Its destruction did not just end the bounty, it unleashed chaos, plunging the world into a state of lack and turmoil. Now consider the volcanic lands of Finland, shaped by a fiery geological past. How could a people witness the incredible fertility of soil enriched by ancient ash, only to see that same earth sometimes tremble and burn? The myth of the Sampo provides a profound metaphor. The creation of the Sampo mirrors the creative power of a volcano. The lava that initially destroys everything in its path slowly weathers into the richest, most productive soil on Earth, a land that can grind out grain and abundance just like the magical artifact. The volcano, in its dormant state, is the Sampo at work providing for the people, but its loss, its destruction, is the eruption itself. The catastrophic shattering of the Sampo and the ensuing turmoil is the volcanic explosion that obliterates the landscape, returning the world to a state of primal chaos and scarcity. The myth translates the terrifying cycle of geological creation and destruction into a story of a crafted treasure, one coveted and tragically lost, its broken pieces at the bottom of the sea, a poetic echo of cooled lava flows sinking back into the earth, waiting for the next great act of forging to begin. That same respectful dialogue with the mountain takes a different form off the coast of West Africa. For the Bubai people of Bioko Island, the distant, towering form of Mount Cameroon was not a mindless geological structure. It was a person, a powerful and ancient old man who slept with one eye open. This old man of the mountain, as they knew him, was a sentient, watchful presence, a guardian spirit of the land who demanded a specific code of conduct. His moods were as volatile as any elders, and the consequences for disrespect were terrifyingly absolute. If the people failed to show proper reverence, if they broke sacred taboos or acted with arrogance toward the natural world, the old man would awaken in a fury. His response was not a grumble or a tremor, but a full-throated roar. He would spew fire and smoke from his summit, raining hot ash and terror down upon the land. This belief was far more than a simple story to explain eruptions. It functioned as a profound cultural mechanism, a way of codifying ecological wisdom into a powerful, memorable narrative. By framing the volcano as a living elder, the myth enforced a necessary respect for an environment full of unpredictable dangers. It taught that survival depended on harmony with forces greater than oneself. You did not simply avoid the mountain because it was dangerous, you honored it because it was alive. This personification made the abstract concept of volcanic activity immediately understandable and morally significant. A river of lava was not just a natural hazard, it was the visible anger of a being who had been offended. The myth provided a clear cause and effect that encouraged a sustainable and cautious way of life, ensuring that the community lived in a state of conscious reciprocity with the powerful old man who watched over them all. The workshop of the gods required more than one divine blacksmith. Deep beneath the same Sicilian mountain that imprisoned Typhon, the Greeks believed another workforce was operating. This was the forge of the Cyclopes, the one-eyed giants born from the earth itself. They were not the savage monsters of later tales, but master craftsmen of immense power, the original architects of the gods' most potent weapons. Their great single eye was not a deformity, but a symbol of their singular focus, a lens of pure concentration fixed on their anvil. The rhythmic, earth-shaking booms that echoed from Mount Etna were not the struggles of a trapped monster. They were the synchronized hammer falls of these colossal beings, their mighty tools striking divine metal with a force that made the very mountain tremble. You can almost hear it, the relentless, percussive beat of creation from a subterranean factory. And what were they forging? Their most famous commission was the very symbol of Zeus's authority, his arsenal of thunderbolts. Each lightning strike that split the sky was a finished weapon, freshly crafted in the fires below and launched from the summit. The intense, white-hot heat of their colossal forges had a visible byproduct, the rivers of molten rock that would occasionally spill down the mountainside. The lava was not a sign of anger, but the overflow from a celestial workshop operating at full capacity. This myth presents the volcano not as a prison or a temperamental being, but as the ultimate industrial complex. Its rumbles are the sounds of industry, its fiery flows the evidence of a relentless cosmic production line. Here, the terrifying power of nature is harnessed and directed, transformed into the tools that maintain order in the heavens themselves. The rhythm of the cosmos has its own destructive beat. In the high solitude of the Himalayas, Mount Kailash stands as a silent, majestic axis of the world, revered across India as the eternal abode of Lord Shiva. Though its peak is one of serene, unmoving stone, the power associated with it is anything but still. This is the power of Shiva's Tandava, the cosmic dance of destruction and creation. With his matted locks flying and his body adorned with serpents and ash, Shiva dances not out of malice but as a necessary function of the universe. His dance is the engine of dissolution, the force that breaks down old forms to make way for the new. Now envision that cosmic energy made manifest on a terrestrial scale. The sheer, raw power released in the Tandava, the tremors from his stomping feet and the fire of his transformative energy, finds a direct parallel in the violent upheaval of a volcano. The lava that incinerates an entire forest is the dance of destruction in its purest form, a river of liquid fire that obliterates everything in its path. Yet, just as Shiva's dance is not an end in itself, the volcanic destruction is not final. After the lava cools, it weathers and breaks down over centuries, becoming the most fertile soil imaginable. From the ashes of total annihilation, new life springs forth, more vibrant and resilient than before. This cycle of ruin and rebirth is the very essence of the Tandava. The volcano, in its terrifying fury and its subsequent gift of fertility, becomes a living embodiment of Shiva's dance on earth. It is a divine process made physical, a reminder that creation and destruction are two sides of the same cosmic coin, forever intertwined in the restless heart of the world. A world cloaked in darkness is a world without stories, and the great trickster Raven would not abide such a fate. In the traditions of the Tlingit and Haida peoples, Raven is a being of immense contradictions, a shape-shifter who uses his cunning for both selfish gain and cosmic creation. One of his most pivotal acts begins with a selfish desire, a scheme to steal the most precious treasure imaginable. An old, powerful man, some say a chief, hoarded all the light of the universe, keeping the sun, the moon, and the stars locked away inside a series of nested boxes. The world lay in perpetual twilight, a dull and shadowy place. Raven, ever curious and ever hungry, devised a plan. He transformed himself into a single, tiny hemlock needle and floated into the water where the chief's daughter would drink. She swallowed him, and in time, Raven was reborn as her child, a strange, dark-eyed baby who cried incessantly for the beautiful, carved boxes. The doting grandfather, unable to bear the child's weeping, finally relented and gave him the smallest box to play with. But the child cried for the next one, and the next, until he held the final, innermost box containing the celestial bodies. The moment he was alone, Raven transformed back into his true form. He tore open the box and the contents exploded into the sky. The sudden, violent release of the sun, moon, and stars was a moment of pure, chaotic creation. Imagine the blinding flash, the searing heat, the deafening roar as light and fire burst forth for the first time. This was not a gentle dawn, but a cataclysmic event. How could such a world-shattering release be interpreted by a people living in a land of fire and ice? The volcanic explosions that periodically scar the Alaskan landscape provide a stunning parallel. The eruption of a volcano is a similar tearing open of the earth, a violent, explosive release of immense, pent-up energy that had been hidden in darkness. The plume of fire and ash that blots out the sky mirrors the sudden brilliance of the stolen stars being scattered across the heavens. The rivers of incandescent lava are the tangible, earthly echo of that first primordial river of light. This myth reframes the terror of a volcanic event as a necessary, if chaotic, act of creation. The world was dark, and Raven, through his deceit, gave it light. The volcano is destructive, yes, but it also forges new land and reshapes the world, bringing forth a new order from the old darkness. It is a reminder that creation and deception, chaos and power, are forever intertwined in the very fabric of the world, a truth held in the memory of a trickster's greatest theft. A warrior's fury does not end with death. In the beliefs of the Mapuche people, the great snow-capped volcanoes that dominate the landscape of southern Chile and Argentina are not inert mountains. They are the dwelling places of the Pilan, immensely powerful spirits of fire and stone. These are not distant gods, but the transformed essences of legendary warriors or mighty ancestral chiefs, their life force so potent it refused to be extinguished. Their power, once used to defend their people, now resides within the mountain, a simmering energy that can either protect or destroy. When the community lives in harmony, following ancient laws and showing proper respect, the Pele remains a benevolent guardian. But a broken taboo, a societal conflict, or an act of disrespect can ignite a spiritual firestorm. The mountain's rumble is the Pele's angry voice. The plume of dark ash is his battle standard unfurled against the sky. The river of lava is his wrath made liquid, a devastating charge down the slopes to cleanse the land of its transgressions. This direct connection meant that survival was a communal responsibility. The Mapuche did not face these eruptions alone. They had intermediaries, the Magi, who were shamans with the unique ability to cross into the spirit world. A Magi would enter a trance, her rhythmic drumming and chanting serving as a bridge to the furious Pele. She did not command the spirit but negotiated, pleaded, and soothed. Her rituals were acts of translation, interpreting the community's remorse and offerings to calm the warrior's heart. She might present finely woven textiles, offer the smoke of sacred plants, or speak the old words of honor and remembrance. A successful mediation could mean the difference between a village buried in ash and a period of renewed balance. The volcano was not a random force of nature, but a powerful, sentient ancestor whose mood was a direct reflection of the people's own spiritual state. The Great Flood subsided, leaving a world washed clean and an ark stranded upon the slopes of a mighty mountain. Mount Ararat, a volcanic giant that straddles the border of modern Turkey and Armenia, became more than a geological feature. It became the sacred cradle of a new humanity, the resting place of Noah's vessel. But the local legends surrounding this mountain speak of more than just a biblical finale. They tell of a giant vulture that made its nest within the volcano's fiery heart. This was no ordinary bird. Its immense, dark wings, when they beat against the confines of the crater, were said to whip the air into the fierce, howling winds that swept across the high plains. And when the great creature stirred, shifting its weight or rearranging its colossal nest, the very mountain would tremble in response. This myth weaves a new layer of mythical fauna into the epic of rebirth, connecting the primal force of the volcano directly to the life that emerged from the ark. After a world purified by water, the rumbles of fire and earth were not a new threat, but the sounds of the world's new guardian settling in. The vulture, a creature often associated with death and renewal, was a fitting inhabitant for this landscape of second chances. Its presence gave a tangible, living cause to the mountain's geothermal breath, a constant reminder that the world, though reborn, was still watched over by powerful, ancient spirits. The story binds the volcanic mountain not to destruction, but to the fragile, ongoing project of life itself, a symbol that from both flood and fire, a new world can stubbornly rise. A desert wind could scorch the crops and choke the life from the Nile, and the Egyptians knew this destructive power had a name. Set was the god of chaos, storms, and the arid, red desert, a force of necessary disruption in a world built on order. But how did a civilization living in a river valley, a land devoid of volcanoes, explain the earth-shattering power they heard of from traders or witnessed on distant horizons? The answer lies in Set's eternal, cosmic battle with his nephew Horus for the throne of Egypt. Their conflict was not a simple skirmish. It was a world-shaking event described in myth as a storm of divine proportions. Imagine the reports reaching Thebes or Memphis, tales of a mountain far to the south or east that had split open, vomiting a black cloud that blotted out the sun for days. For the Egyptians, this was not a geological event. The suffocating ash cloud was the dust storm of Set's rage, a tangible manifestation of the chaos he embodied. The tremors that reportedly shook the very ground, even from a great distance, were the thunder of their colossal struggle. The fiery glow on the horizon at night could only be the divine, destructive power of Set himself unleashed, a fire that consumed the very earth. This interpretation allowed them to fit a terrifying, foreign phenomenon into their own well-understood cosmology. A volcanic eruption was not a new kind of disaster. It was simply the battle between order and chaos raging on a scale so immense it could be perceived from their orderly green world. Even the lava flow, a concept they may never have seen, could be understood as the scorching breath of the desert god, turning the land itself into a barren wasteland in his image. The volcano became a distant theater for their most fundamental spiritual conflict, a dramatic reminder that the forces of disorder were always present, always testing the fragile balance of Maat, the cosmic order that held their world together. The name White Island evokes a place of pure, sun-bleached stone, but beneath that pale surface, a far more colorful and dangerous story was told. Ancient Greek poets spoke of Sicily by this name, its brilliant limestone cliffs shining across the sea, yet they also knew of the fire that simmered within. They explained this paradox with a legend of 3 extraordinary bulls. These were no ordinary cattle, but creatures owned by the monstrous giant Gion, and their hides were forged of gleaming, unbreakable bronze. More astonishing still was the fire that roared from their nostrils and mouths, a constant, seething exhalation of pure heat. Can you envision such a herd moving across the landscape like living, breathing forges, their metallic hooves striking sparks from the rock? This was not mere fantasy, but a profound metaphorical interpretation of the land itself. The bulls' bronze hides mirrored the rich metal deposits found in the Sicilian earth, a land known for its mines. And their fiery breath, that relentless, earth-born flame, was a perfect poetic match for the geothermal vents and the volcanic fury of Mount Etna. The rumble of the ground became the thunder of their stampede. The plumes of ash and gas rising into the sky were the visible proof of their scorching breath. The myth transformed the island's terrifying geology into a tangible, if monstrous, possession. It was not a random mountain that erupted, but the bulls of Gion stirring in their subterranean stables, their immortal, metallic bodies channeling the very fires of the earth. A dream can build a city from the sound of a single howl. In 14th century Lithuania, Grand Duke Gediminas was hunting in the sacred forests when he decided to camp for the night on a hill overlooking the confluence of 2 rivers. That night he had a vision that would alter the course of history. In his dream, a massive, towering iron wolf stood upon the hill, its metallic form gleaming under the moon, and it threw back its head to release a long, mournful and powerful howl. The sound was not like that of any living creature. It was a chorus of 100 wolves, a deep, resonant cry that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. When Gediminas consulted his head priest, the interpretation was clear and immediate. The iron wolf symbolized a great and impregnable city, a capital that would become as strong and durable as iron itself. Its howl represented the city's future fame, a voice that would echo across the world, drawing people and power to its gates. That city, born from a dream, was Vilnius. Now step away from the forest and listen to that sound again. The deep, primal, earth-shaking resonance of the iron wolf's cry finds a stunning parallel in the low, guttural roar that precedes a volcanic eruption. It is the same profound, metallic vibration that seems to emanate from the planet's very core, a sound of immense, untamed power announcing its presence. The wolf's unyielding iron body mirrors the volcanic stone that builds new land, hard and enduring. This legend beautifully captures the moment a civilization interprets a fundamental force of nature, not as a threat but as a call to create. The rumble of the earth becomes a founding prophecy, a voice in the darkness urging humanity to build something that will last. Even a demigod must risk burning his hands to slow the sun. Across Polynesia, the trickster hero Maui undertook his most audacious feat, not for personal glory, but for the survival of his people. The sun raced across the sky so swiftly that the days were short, leaving no time for crops to grow or for the earth to be properly warmed. Armed with ropes woven from his sister's magical hair, Maui and his brothers journeyed to the great pit where the sun rose each morning. They lay in wait, and as the sun emerged, they lunged, lassoing its fiery limbs with their unbreakable cords. The struggle that followed was a cosmic event. The sun, a being of incandescent fury, fought back with all its might, straining against the ropes. Imagine the friction, the immense, searing heat generated as a celestial body was physically restrained. The ropes, though magical, would have glowed white-hot, and the very air would have crackled with the energy of the conflict. This was not a gentle negotiation, but a battle of raw power against raw power. The intense, localized heat from that struggle, the sparks that flew as the sun was forced to submit, had to go somewhere. Where else could that concentrated celestial fire have gone but deep into the earth itself? The volcanic activity that pulses through the Pacific Ring of Fire can be seen as a direct remnant of that primordial confrontation. The magma that churns beneath the islands is the stored heat from the moment Maui snared the sun, a permanent reservoir of the friction that brought humanity longer, warmer days. Every rumble from a volcano is a distant echo of the sun's struggle, and every river of lava is a trickle of the very fire that Maui risked everything to harness for us all. That final archetype coils deep within the collective imagination of humanity, a shared explanation for the mountain's fury. Across continents and cultures, the dragon in the mountain emerges as a universal answer. This great serpent or winged beast slumbering beneath the rock provides a complete and terrifyingly logical narrative for volcanic rage. Its fiery breath is the plume of ash and the river of lava that scorches the slopes. Its restless movement, twisting and turning in its subterranean lair, is the earthquake that rattles the ground, and its thunderous roar, born of ancient anger or a simple shift in its colossal sleep, is the explosion that tears the summit apart. From the worms of European folklore guarding hordes in volcanic hills to the lung dragons of Chinese legend, seen as the very source of the Earth's fiery veins, this creature embodies the living, breathing danger of the land itself. This shared instinct to personify the planet's most violent geology reveals a profound human truth. Faced with an incomprehensible and random force, our ancestors did the most natural thing. They gave it a face, a mind, and a motive. They created a monster that could, in theory, be appeased, outwitted, or even slain by a hero. The dragon in the mountain is not just a myth. It is the ultimate act of making sense, a story woven from the very fabric of fear and wonder, uniting humanity in the face of the Earth's untamable heart. These stories from every corner of the globe echo each other in a profound and haunting chorus. Stepping back from the individual tales, we see a grand, unified human response to the Earth's fury. The first and most powerful pattern is the overwhelming need to personify the volcano. It is almost never just a mountain. It becomes a goddess like Pele, a giant like Typhon, a grieving mother like Papa, or a master craftsman like Vulcan. We give the mountain a face, a name, and a personality. We give it human emotions because how else can we comprehend such violence if not through the lens of our own rage, our own passion, our own sorrow? The volcano is angry and must be appeased. It is passionate like the lovers of Mount Mayon. It is grieving like the Earth Mother holding Yuamoko. It is betrayed like Vulcan or unjustly punished like Prometheus. We see ourselves in the fire. This personification transforms a random, terrifying force into something with which we can negotiate. You cannot reason with a tectonic plate, but you can offer a gift to a goddess. You cannot plead with a magma chamber, but you can soothe the spirit of a restless ancestor. This is the first great theme, the humanization of nature's most inhuman power. The second universal thread is the concept of punishment. Time and again, the eruption is a divine rebuke for a moral failing. The Inca believed Pachacamac shook the earth when rituals were forgotten. The Aztecs saw Tezcatlipoca's fiery breath as a response to cosmic imbalance. The Mapuche knew a Pilan's wrath was ignited by a broken taboo. This belief imposes a moral order on chaos. A disaster is not meaningless suffering, it is a direct consequence. It is a terrible but understandable transaction between humanity and the divine, a system where proper behavior ensures safety. This framework provides a desperate kind of comfort, offering a way to prevent future catastrophe through piety and respect. It turns fear into a code for living. And finally, these myths are bound by the beautiful, paradoxical cycle of destruction and creation. The lava that obliterates a forest is the same material that, centuries later, will become the most fertile soil on Earth. The myths understand this instinctively. Shiva's dance of destruction makes way for new life. The hero twins conquer the fire of the underworld to ascend as the sun and moon. The shattered pieces of the fire god Kagutsuchi become the deities of mountains and iron. The volcano is never just an end. It is always a violent, painful, terrifying new beginning. It is the Earth's method of reinvention, and our ancestors saw that truth clearly. They looked into the heart of the inferno and saw not just an ending, but a rebirth, a cycle as old as the world itself. From the passionate heart of Pele to the apocalyptic sword of Surtur, these 35 ancient voices form a breathtaking tapestry of human imagination. We have wandered a world where the same terrifying geological force was a punished titan, a grieving mother, a divine blacksmith, and a chained monster. The incredible diversity of these explanations is matched only by their surprising similarities. Cultures separated by vast oceans with no possible contact all looked into the fiery abyss and saw a reflection of their own lives, their own fears, and their own understanding of the cosmos. These stories were far more than primitive attempts at science. They were profound narratives that gave meaning to chaos, transforming random violence into a saga of love, punishment, or celestial industry. They helped people live with the terrifying power of their world, not by explaining the mechanics of magma, but by giving them a way to speak to the mountain, to appease its spirit, and to find their place within a living, breathing, and often furious planet. The earth spoke in a language of fire and tremor, and our ancestors answered with the only thing they had: stories. What local legends about nature have you heard? Share your favorite geological myths in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of our past.